welcome to pdfsupply.com. Today we're going to be testing a RX3i analog output. I have here an IC694ALG391. This is a 2-channel output in current milliamps. The range is from 0 to 20 milliamps DC. Okay. And basically the test is just going to be to test the two outputs and the different types of troubleshooting that we do here to make sure that the card is in perfect working order. Now, what you're going to need for this test, I have everything assembled here in a RX3i rack with a power supply and a CPU. And you also need for the test a multimeter, some type of multimeter. I'll show you what I'm using for this particular test, which is a Fanuc multimeter. And I'm going to be able to measure in milliamps DC with this to see what my outputs are giving me. All right. Another thing to keep in mind with this particular module, I'm using an IC695CHS007 rack, and or if you're using a CHS012 or 016 rack, you're going to need an external power source, 24 volt DC, in order to get the module OK light on. Okay. Now that also does the self-diagnostic. So on the far left hand side of the chassis, you'll notice something labeled TB for terminal block. And the bottommost screw is the negative input for your negative lead from your 24 volt DC power supply. And the second to the last screw, bottommost screw, is the terminal for the positive lead from your 24 volt DC power supply. So if you're looking at the LEDs that I have in front of you on this video, and I turn on my 24 volt DC power supply, you'll notice my OK light comes on. Alright, so let this be the first lesson. If there's any issue with the card and you have everything connected properly, then you should get an OK light. If you don't get an OK light here, then you're probably not going to be able to follow the test. There's likely something wrong with the analog card. Okay. So now that I do have an OK light, the next thing I'm going to do is go into the software. I'm using Proficy Machine Edition. Okay, and in my navigator area, I'm going to select all the same modules and devices that you see in front of you. So my rack is the 007. I have RX3i power supply using slots 0 and 1, and my processor, CPU 320, is using slots 2 and 3. Okay, that leaves me with the next available slot as slot number 4. As you can see, my arrows over it. Now you can double click on this or right click and select Add Module. And we want to open up the tab that is specific to analog output, and the card we're choosing is an IC694ALG391 2-circuit output analog current. Okay. Now this differs from some of the other analog cards where there's not really any settings that you can edit for the different values and scaling for this particular card. So the one thing that I want to recommend is that you guys notice what your reference address is. Okay, and I've highlighted it. It's percent analog output AQ 00001. So once we get into the reference table, I'll show you guys where you can find that. That'll be important. And now that that's all set, we're going to hook up to the processor by clicking the lightning bolt icon. And then the green handprint, which will toggle us onto online mode. And what that means, if you follow my arrow, we're in programmer mode, stop disabled. That means that the processor is not in run mode and that the outputs are disabled. And our configuration and logic are not equal. That's important to know because the processor was handling a different task before we've asked it to test this ALG391. So it's technically faulted at the moment. It's confused. We're going to go to Target, Online Commands, Clear. And what we want to do here is just clear the controller in the I/O fault table. Select OK. Just the bottom two selections, yes. And if you don't do that part in the process, if you skip that or try to skip it, it's going to hang you up when you do the download and run. Alright, so in order to download and run, we hit this icon with the download information and run button in one. First thing it's going to ask us is what do we want to download to the controller, and that is the hardware configuration in motion and logic. Select OK. Now it's just a simple test. We don't need to write anything to permanent flash memory, so just keep it to the top two selections. This again just a blank file between the processor and the ALG391. Okay, now once this build is complete, it should take a short amount of time for it to download. The next thing is going to be that we want to open up our reference table. All right, and then once we have the reference table open, we're going to find that same reference address, analog output 00001, which we'll be able to do in just a second here. Okay, we're going to enable the outputs. Okay. We drag this bar down. Again, I'm in the navigator, and I'm going to expand my default tables so I can find the analog output. Okay, right here. You can right click or double click on it. Top right hand corner, if you hover your mouse over it like I'm doing right now, as you can see below my arrow, it's saying that I'm at location analog output 00001. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to give it a maximum value of 32,000. Enter. And channel 2. Okay, and that's the full length of the card, 2 channels. So now, the next thing I want to do is I want to probe the terminals to make sure that I have a value there. Okay, I got my fluke meter. I'm on milliamp setting, featuring or milliamps measured in DC. And as I said before, this card has a maximum of 20 milliamps, 20 plus. I mean, I should probably get either 20 or 21 milliamps from each channel with a value of 32,000. Okay, so terminal screws number 3 and 5, and that's on the left-hand side of the strip, are going to be channel 1. And terminal screws number 4 and 6 are going to be channel number 2. So I'm now probing channel 1, and I have, once I can keep these probed, I have a solid, stable 21 milliamps. It's not moving up or down or anything like that. All right, and I'm going to go to channel 2, and I have a solid 21 milliamps. Now that's fine, but what we typically see with analog cards is they'll usually fail at full value. And what that means is you could put in any value you want. So we'll cut this in half and go to 16,000 on the software. And that should yield about 13 or so milliamps. Now, if the card was failed, it would still be reading 21 milliamps. And we could put in 8,000 for the value, and it's going to read 21 milliamps. And we could put 4,000. And it doesn't matter, because if it's failed, it's always going to read at full value. So what I'm getting at is that you need to check the full range and resolution of this card, is what we're doing here. And the way I do it, so here we have 13 milliamps, just like I expected. And that's on both channels, so I'm starting to feel like these are really good. And then you can cut it in half again. Go with a value of 8,000 in your two locations for your channel 1 and channel 2. Okay, and then go ahead and probe that. And make sure that you do this step. Make sure that you check it at 32,000, 16,000, 8,000. Put in any value you want, 12,000, doesn't matter. Just as long as you're able to check the range and resolution. So the first thing, just to recap, is that you have an OK light on. Okay, that the OK light comes on in a response to the module being powered up. It goes through a short diagnostic, make sure everything's working. Second thing is to make sure that each channel has range and resolution. Make sure that you're able to go up and down the different values that it promises, 0 to 20 milliamps. And of course you want to also completely shut off the circuit and go to a value of 0 and make sure that it's as close to 0 as possible, or only 4 milliamps depending on the card. Now, and then the third thing is very important. make sure that each circuit or each channel is stable, absolutely stable. As you could see from what I had as a 21 milliamp reading, but it wasn't going up and down to 19 and 20 and 18 and 22, and it wasn't jumping all around. You don't want it to do that. It must be stable, okay? Otherwise it's going to give you a problem in the field. So any of those things that I mentioned that could possibly go wrong is an issue with the card, all the way down to the card just not working at all. You know, you probe the channels and there's no value whatsoever, even if you put it in. If the card seems like it's okay, the OK LED is on. So any of those things could be a catastrophic problem with the card. And it's an ALG391 is an analog card that we very commonly repair here at PDF Supply. We offer exchange programs, new and remanufactured products. So if that's something that you need or interests you, please see us at pdfsupply.com. Thank you.